Hey everybody, it's Andy here over here with my side of the fence. This week we are lucky enough to have Danica Roem. She is my state senator. And I reached out a couple of weeks ago and we heard from your office folks middle of last week, and here we are.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you so much for the invitation. Good to be back at Corporate Circle, working here for the first time in 23 years. If you don't know out there, my second job I ever had, my first job, I worked at Pivot Center Stadium for the Potomac Cannons at the time, after they were Prince William Cannons.
Right.
Did that in 2000 and 2001. And then 2001, I started working right down the street here at B.W. Smith and Associates, when that was a land surveying company here. So even when I went to college, I would come back in the summer and for winter break, and I would still be working right here, right in Corporate Circle. Yeah.
I had forgotten or didn't even know this place was here, even though I've been here my whole life. Our office was over on West Street in Old Town.
Yeah, yeah.
And that office got to be just too, we were stacked on top of one another, right? And so we hit her, and he brought us over here, and we've been here, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. It's a great location.
Your view is the woods, which is, I grew up in the wooded part of Manassas. Basically, if you know where Signal Hill is, not the city part, Warren goes into the county.
Yeah.
And then you keep going back to where Wally Covington once told me, it looks like Deliverance back there. That's where I lived for 33 years. I lived in the last street before you got to the dirt road, right by the Fairfax Riding Gun Club, which is still Prince William,
right.
Not Fairfax. But yeah, so I like the woods because I grew up in the woods.
Yeah, we have the woods, and then the train tracks, and whoever walks up and down.
Every one of your podcast specials has to have a train in the back, because nothing says Manassas more than either congestion on 28, a good slice of Tony's, or trains.
Yeah, truly. Did you grow up in Manassas?
I'm a lifer. Yeah.
Oh, is that right?
Born September 30th, 1984 at Prince William Hospital, right off Sudley Road, and all the different names that's undergone since then.
Right.
I think that might have even been before the Hilton Birthing Center began, actually, to be honest.
Probably.
Yeah, and the kid who would end up on my baseball team when I was a Manassas Park Yorkshire Little League, when I was a kid, was born the exact same day, the next bed over from where my mom was going to labor.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not often you encounter, Manassas natives or Prince William natives. Just, it's such a transient area. You have federal workers, DOD guys, and their families, and it's such a transient area. People are here for 4 years or whatever.
Oh, I'm first generation Virginian on my mom's side of the family. Even actually my dad's side of the family, to be clear about it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was born a year or 2 years after my sister was. And but my dad's side of the family, we had family here who were already there. That's why they moved, because my mom's from the Bronx originally. You got to hear Bronx.
Oh, we might have that in common. You know Rich Meyer? You met him
from
at the Cattleman.
Yeah.
His mom and his aunt lived in the Bronx.
We had a long talk about that, actually.
Right.
We were sitting outside of Grand Central Station in Old Town. Yeah. We had an obnoxiously long talk about it, because the other cattlemen were like, can we do anything else, please?
We're checking out.
And my dad's side of the family, my dad was from Paramus in New Jersey. And my dad died in 1987. But so they had the Virginia connection, basically, and so when they moved and they came to Manassas, that's kind of what brought them here. And my dad worked at the Social Security Administration office, right down the street from here, until he died in 1987. And my mom, she worked for just about 40 years as a customs broker over at Dulles. So she battled Route 28 from Manassas to Loudoun every day, 4 decades. So here's truly kind of, we'll say, ran 4 campaigns on it, won, and secured $62.5 million to fix it. So there we are.
My first memory of 28 was riding to Dulles with my dad. I was a little kid.
I thought you were going to say on horseback.
Close. And we went across the bridge into Fairfax, and at that point it was just 2 lanes.
Yeah.
And I can remember vividly seeing just a line of taillights going all the way to Centerville. And then I commuted up and down that thing. I hated it.
Yeah, and back in the day, before it was wide in the mid 80s in Yorkshire, when it had only 2 lanes, people forget it only had one light as well for a good stretch of it too.
Yeah.
And when you grow by several 100,000 people and your infrastructure doesn't keep up along the way, that speaks to one, poor planning, second, poor land use policy, and three, a lesson that I learned from the now late supervisor Bob Weir from Gainesville District back when he was still town council member. I covered him, when I was the news reporter from the Gainesville Times from 06 to 2015 when he was on council. He would say, you have to have adequate existing infrastructure in place before you build.
Yeah, except for, I don't think that's what the law says.
No, that's what he said makes good planning.
It makes great sense.
Yeah, and so that's something I've taken to heart over the years too.
Yeah. I mean, we faced that when, especially some of the earlier developments in the 80s and 90s that initially were voted down and litigated, and the city lost because there was no public facilities law that said that had to be, and I don't think that ever changed. I would doubt it.
I do have one funny 28 story for you though from when Chuck Colgan was still in office. And I interviewed him once because, well, I interviewed him many times, but I was interviewing him because he got the money for the 28 bridge over Wellington, the railroad track right down the street from here.
Yep.
And then Senator Cuccinelli got on his case about it, and he said, hey, that money should have gone to the Fairfax County Parkway for whatever issues there in Fairfax. So I asked Chuck to respond, and he goes, oh, that's just asinine. And he goes, I probably shouldn't have said that. Chuck was a hoot to cover. I loved interviewing Chuck Colgan.
He and Harry both were tremendously practical men, and I think at least some of that comes out of their local experience.
They held a joint fundraiser together.
Yeah.
R&D. You don't see that now.
You will no. They would burn the town down. It's very much Well, when I ran for office, there was basically not a Democrat Party because the Democrats just ran.
Side note, by the way. Democrat is the noun. Democratic is the adjective. Democratic Party versus a Democrat individual. There you go.
There was no party. That's because those guys, and Judy might have been more of a Democrat, just France Republicans. So it was, I don't want to say it was nonpartisan, but it was once.
Well, as you have mentioned on this podcast before, you had quite a habit of adopting Democrats into the Republican committee.
Absolutely.
And then they turned out to be Democrats. Who knew?
Yeah. But for all that,
quick shout out. Hey, Mark Wolf, how you doing?
He was one of the first ones on.
Yeah, I listened to it. Yeah,
Mark and I have known each other a long time. And he's a pretty easy hang, right? He's a guy, he's easy to talk to.
Very, very much.
But he didn't he switched parties.
We have different perspectives on stuff. Like I remember listening to your podcast with him. He was talking a lot about Godwin Drive Extended and how that was something that, he really wanted. And, he had a lot of, points to make about like, hey, look, Reese, we're going to be dealing with capacity and X, Y, and Z, a lot of stuff. I come from a very, very different point of view, which is, I represent and have been representing the people who are going to lose their homes because of it.
Right.
And, for me, the protecting tree canopy, protecting the woods, I told you before, I grew up in the woods. Protecting the woods is a huge deal for me. And that thing, because it would not have just dealt with the old Centerville Bridge that goes into Fairfax, but have created another one, which means another 150 feet wide of right-of-way space, more tree clearing from there. I find it's not so hippy-dippy liberal position anymore to go around, Western Prince William and Manassas and talk about saving trees. Turns out people of all stripes right now are like, yeah, hey, actually, we do care about this because we're watching deforestation before our very eyes. And oh, by the way, those homes there, that's some of the last area of really affordable single-family housing that you're going to really find in the greater Manassas area. And I've got constituents there who have lived here since the 60s and who are now well into their 80s. What are you going to do? Displace them and put them in an apartment? This is where they want to be, And so when I was on, when I was in the House of Delegates, I was on the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority for a couple of years, and I voted against Goblin Drive Extended twice when I was there. And I really stressed my STARS project, which is basically for innovative intersection designs between Manassas Park and Yorkshire to deal with safety and throughput. And the big case I was trying to make to everyone is no bypass plan, regardless of the merits of the plan, actually fixes Route 28 itself. It doesn't. It's a bypass inherently. My plan is designed to fix 28 itself. And it does it for way less money than the potential widening that Prince William County is now looking at with it, right? Because we don't have to take out businesses and we don't have to take out houses in order to do it. We got to take out like part of a parking lot so we can make sure that like buses and tractor trailers can make a complete U-turn. But when this thing's done and now that it's fully funded, game on, let's go. You'll start seeing utility relocation next year. We're gonna have a series of restricted.
So that's funded?
Oh yeah, for phase, all three phases are funded. Phase 1 is where it's going to begin. That is going to be between Manassas Drive and Spruce Street. And what you'll see there are a series of restricted crossing U-turns, and we'll have a median U-turn. We'll have a raised median, what they call the suicide lane now. And that'll prevent 40, 50 crashes a year once it's actually completely implemented along that 2.1 mile stretch of road. And eventually at full build out, we'll also have 1.75 miles of contiguous sidewalk. Try telling someone who lives over at the Orchard Bridge apartments to go and walk to Manassas Park right now. They're playing Frogger. It can't be done. Or not safely anyway.
No, there's no way.
Yeah. Do you remember the Seinfeld where George has the Frogger machine that he's trying to walk across the street?
Yeah.
That's going through 28. And you've lived here long enough. I'm sure you have seen the same thing I have when you're going up 28 and you see someone just run in the middle of Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And you just go, your jaw just kind of lanterns for a minute and you go, good God. And you're like, and you also realize in that moment that you're several hundred feet away from the next crosswalk, right? And so people being people, some people are not gonna take the time to go walk and they're just gonna make a run for it.
Yeah, and it's not like being a crosswalk will save you anyways, but
we can make them better though.
We can make them better,
right? Right now there's no center refuge on it at all. Right now it's just like good luck. As Ron White the comedian would have said, like pin a $20 bill to your collar and say good luck.
Make sure you have your ID in your pocket.
Or your social security number written on your arm.
Yeah, no, that's been a source. I was never a fan of the Godwin Extended project, really, because I didn't like what it would do to our neighborhoods in Wellington. Because then that road becomes, those roads over there, they become what they were built for, 4-lane divided highways. And right now, it's relative. In the afternoon, in the morning, it's a little busier, but it's not horrible. But if you opened up Godwin, all of that traffic, not all, but some decent percentage that now goes down Liberia to 28 is coming through those neighborhoods at high speed. I
do think Councilman, now Vice Mayor Wolf, he did make a really valid point about development in Bristow, Nokesville, and into Fauquier having to be filtered through Manassas, right? And that's valid. At the same time, I also look at it a little differently in that, are we going to have people go up the Parkway to 66 by making sure that now that we've got the funding that will eventually be coming to transform the interchanges at the Parkway in Selby Manor, the Parkway in Wellington, to actually condense that into one thing, that's the whole thing. If you can eliminate as many traffic lights as possible from the Parkway to 66, you're going to incentivize a lot more people to actually use that to get into not only Centerville, but keep in mind, tens of thousands of people every day. We have this idea that if you're from Manassas, if you're from Manassas Park or Western Prince William, that you are always commuting inside the Beltway, right? But how about all those people who work in Chantilly and Reston and Herndon and Sterling and Dulles?
I did that for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, if you were to go from Manassas in the 20109 part, so Bull Run part of Manassas, and you were to get on at 66 there, you could drive from 66 to 28 to Route 7 and not hit a single traffic light until you get to Leesburg now. And I mean, that's that's good. That's an improvement.
That's good.
You know, and like, let's keep that going.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that primarily funded through your project? Is that NVTA money?
Some of it is, yes, but another significant chunk of that money is from the Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Program. And then we get a little bit of money for RSTP funding. That was basically just like $300,000 something for design engineering. And this was, so I'll try to give you the condensed history from this. So first campaign, I ran my campaign on a slogan of Fix Route 28 now, right? And I said very vocally, I have watched politicians for years when I was a reporter kick the can of responsibility of Route 28. Whose job is it to fix 28? Not mine, not mine. Or someone would throw out an idea here or there.
Right.
And, even, to my predecessor, who was, former Delegate Marshall, he had even put out an idea of turning the, what I referred to as a suicide lane before into a reverse lane. But there was a Parsons Brinkerhoff study that came back that called it dangerous under any circumstance, right? Now, at least it's like, it was an idea that he had put forward. At least there was a conversation there, right? But I was looking for something that, number one, wasn't going to be considered dangerous. But second, I started telling people very vocally in that campaign, I'm going to take responsibility. You can stop associating the blame, stop associating everything else. If you like what comes out, great. And then hopefully I do a good job. If you don't, you can put that on my feet as well. And it's like, because to me, that's what leadership is supposed to be, is someone takes responsibility, fail or pass or succeed, however it is, and says, this is my project. I'm going to get it done. And well, it takes a village to fix Rep 28, and I had to have a lot of partnerships along the way, several endorsements. And even when we went up for smart scale funding, first couple times, we didn't get the money because the project, it did well in safety, especially. And it was actually like one of the best in the state for like safety problem mitigation. But they're like cost to benefit analysis. They were going blah, blah, blah. What they wanted at the end of the day with this was they really wanted us to break it down into 3 phases so that we could basically get funding for each phase in chunks. Ultimately, to me, it makes it more expensive to do it, but well, whatever. That's the powers that be wanted. So I said, okay, fine. And so, like God knows Rick Canzales from Prince William Department of Transportation, we had so many talks about how we were both so frustrated about cost escalation that comes from a lot of projects like this. The longer that you wait, the more expensive project gets. Prime example for that is on Route 15, just outside town of Haymarket, at the railroad crossing. Exactly the thing that Senator Colgan got for 28 in Manassas, I'm trying to get over in Haymarket. And that thing has ballooned in cost. It was like 50-something million when it started. It's pushing like 90 or so now. And I'm just like, this is what happens if you kick the can down the road. It just gets worse. Yeah. And we had someone get killed over there. I mean, so let's go get this. And so, when I look at things that I've managed to accomplish or am in the process of accomplishing for, fixing roads. We're getting 2 modern roundabouts on Rollins Ford Road, secured $8.9 million for that. And our former Congresswoman, Jennifer Wexton, she got an extra $500,000 for that. That happened after we had a fatal crash at a state manor in Rollins Ford. That's between Gainesville and Bristow. Right. Getting this 28 project, huge deal. I'm personally actually excited about the modern roundabout going in at Sudley Road, 28 in Prescott. Other people might feel differently. If it's done right, 100%. It is done. If it is done correctly, and I know you've talked about the one on Grand Avenue, this one I have a lot more promise for, because one of the biggest things with it that you learn when you really get into nuts and bolts of transportation policy is, in order for a modern roundabout to work beyond simply slowing down traffic in a high-speed corridor, you need as close to an equal amount of traffic coming in opposite directions. You don't have that in Georgetown South. It is simply people coming in and out, right? And it's really being built to accommodate the new development that's coming in more so, right? At Sudley and 28, you very much do have a significant traffic flow in both directions at that point, and to a point coming from Prescott, right? So
in the afternoons, for sure.
Yeah, right. And so I do think that is going to be a lot more successful, and that's now fully funded as well. And so, and that was from NVTA money. And so I look at this, I'm like, okay, this is good. And even when I was off the MBTA, I still showed up in front of the MBTA and advocated for that project and for my baby, my 28 Stars project. And they funded it. And Chair Randall, to her credit, she then says, like, all right, thank you, Senator Roem. Hopefully we will never have to hear from you again. Like, there'll be more coming, but not on 28.
Right. Yeah, that 28 project. I mean, I covered this pretty extensively with the chief, and I don't want to speak for him, but he seemed to agree that like the primary problem with the South Grant thing is the width of the lanes. If you had the width the same as they are north of the railroad tracks, you would safety equipment would be able to get around you. Over there, I mean, you'll have to bail off onto the walkway.
What's going to happen with that, and the reason that it's kind of flat there in the first place, is you're going to have larger vehicles that just use the middle anyway. They're not going to go and make a full semicircle around it. Like,
I'm talking about the lanes that approach the roundabout.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's. I think it was Mark explained to me that, like, it's flat for a reason. There's not a tree in the middle of it because some crash into it.
And also, I have a complaint about another one in my district, as you're going on Route 55 from Gainesville into the town of Haymarket. Sorry, I was just in Herndon, same two bands last night, which is at Jimmy's Old Town Tavern, owned by Jimmy Cerrito of Manassas Park, one of my constituents. So there was a tie-in, and the bands were from Manassas. But anyways, so when you're going into town of Haymarket from Gainesville, if you look at the grading of that roundabout, it looks like a teacup ride that you would have at the Prince William County Fair. It's kind of like, whoa.
Right.
And I just look at that, and I want to know who finished the design and went, looks good.
Looks good to me. This is why Americans hate roundabouts.
But I'm a believer. I remember.
I am too.
Yeah, you've talked about going overseas in Ireland,
to
right?
India. And
I remember when I was in a plane flying from London to Western France, and I looked out the window and I saw no traffic lights. It was just roundabouts. I was like, wow, it's cool. And then I was flying into Wisconsin once, and I looked out, and it was 1, 2, 3 in a row, and it was so cool. I took a picture of it, and I just have this idea in my head. I'm just like, oh my God, you want to see this coolest thing? And just like, you nerd.
Yeah. Traffic nerd.
Yes.
Yeah. When we went to Europe, my daughter did a semester study abroad. And so we took the occasion to go to a couple of places in Europe, and we went to Paris. I'm a food nerd.
Yeah.
So Paris or, the south of France are two pretty obvious targets. And Paris was much more convenient. So I'm also a bike nerd. I rode bikes some.
Then you need to go to Copenhagen.
Well, I've seen pictures of that place. That's unbelievable. But the Tour de France ends, on the Champs-Elysees, and it's cobblestones. So we were walking up there to see the Arc de Triomphe. And surrounding the Arc de Triomphe is an 8-lane roundabout.
That's right.
And my jaw just hit the ground, and I was like, well, if these guys can make 8 lanes work, certainly we can make 1 or 2.
I also have to distinguish, by the way, there's traffic circles that you see in DC. That's not what we're bringing to Manassas.
Yeah.
That is a different design. This is why I always say modern roundabout. There are 6 or so.
Here comes the train.
There's my friend. What's up, Norfolk Southern? Hope you're having a good day.
Yeah.
So one thing that I found with modern roundabouts, when it's done right and everything, it's one of, I think, 6 or 7 innovative intersection designs that you can actually look up on the Virginia Department of Transportation website. You can even go into their YouTube pages. They'll show you how they work right.
Right.
And for example, we've got the Divergent Diamond Interchange. Now we got 2 of them. We have one at Balls Ford in the Parkway, and then we've got another one at Haymarket and 15. The one at Haymarket and 15, if you remember before, traffic would back up on 66 for a very long time. And then it got counterintuitive because what's right is left and what's left is right. And you're like, wait, what? And it works.
The first time you hit it, you're like,
whoa.
Am I is this like a suicide proposition? Yeah. But it worked pretty well.
I will say the late Supervisor Ware was not a fan of the design of the Balls Ford one.
Right?
Yeah. He had some complaints, but I'm of a mindset of I think as people get used to it, give it time, but there's always room for improvement, and I think it's because the Balls Ford change that you've had is so extensive.
It is.
it's not just one intersection that we're talking about here.
Right.
The main goal was to take care of the parkway. It wasn't so much about Wellsford itself.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that, and it's like I used to. My daughter used to get on the bus to Manhattan at the commuter park lot out there, and I just told her, I said, "Look, go down to Balls Fork, hang a left, and at the 7-Eleven, go right." And she's like, "There's no 7-Eleven." This was after the Divergent Diamond thing went in, and so I went out there and I was like, "There's no 7-Eleven." I just get my phone and I'm like, "It's over there somewhere." And yeah, it was a huge change.
Yep.
So it doesn't shock me that they're changing.
Yeah, but you know what though? I remember I remember my first campaign coming back from Heritage Hunt in Gainesville, polls close, 7 o'clock, and I am on 66 trying to get down the parkway, and it is just backed
Gridlock
up.
Yeah.
And so that light had to go. And I would say that's one of the, for all the criticisms, and there are a legion of them,
Sure.
that I have of Republican and Democratic led Board of County Supervisors, past and present, for Prince William. One of the better land use decisions that they made was to take care of and remove that light from the parkway, because it was dangerous. You should never ever have traffic backing up on 66 on under any circumstance.
Yeah. Why did you run for office the first time?
Fixer 28. full stop. Remember what I said back then? I said,
"Oh, I thought it was bold."
Yeah, but what I said at the time was, my predecessor was more concerned about where I went to the bathroom than now I got to work. And so it's like, no, go fix it. And well, here we are.
I thought it was bold. I really did. Did you think you had a good shot?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, look, you might. I was a news reporter for 10 and a half years. My secret weapon that I talked about very seldom, but I did do a few interviews where I mentioned it, was I spent almost 3.5 years writing for the Hotline over at the Watergate as part of National Journal Group, covering campaigns and federal and state politics. Every day starting at 6 something in the morning until, afternoon. I have to be in DC. So you take the VRE to Crystal City, sprint through the mall to try to get the blue line to Foggy Bottom and go over. Or you missed that, got to get a red cab. Or whenever I had 2 jobs, because I was working Gainesville Times full time and working there full time, so I had to have a pied a terre at near my other job.
Right.
So maybe a couple nights a week I spend a night in Arlantria at a $800 a month place, which is unheard of now. And it's impossible, even though it was a studio then. And just going from there. But it was like, I had spent so much time interviewing candidates, interviewing strategists, like consultants, campaign, people and stuff, whatever. I had a really good idea of what I was doing before I got into it. But then I also knew I had no experience on the inside out of a campaign. I only had experience outside looking at front row seat, to be clear.
Sure.
At many, many, many Democratic and Republican victory night parties that were not victory night parties. And like
the worst.
Yeah, just a lot of those, right? But I had never been on a campaign. And, so I had to spend my adult life as, politically neutral, as an independent, because that's your job as a reporter. Yeah, I have my own feelings, but if you're actually good at journalism, then, that's how it goes, right? So I decided, all right, before I was going to definitely run, I decided, a few things happened. Number one, Don Shaw, who ran against Bob Marshall in 2015, he sent me an email on August 4th, 2016, which you can read about in my book, Burn the Page, out now in audiobook, ebook, and hardbook.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, released my book in 2022. It'll make you laugh. It's very fun. But he sent me an email saying, "Hey, I got to move out of the district. Have you considered running? It'd be really good." And I looked at my laptop and I laughed. I went, and I closed the laptop. Didn't even respond. Next day, I get a phone call from State Delegate Rip Sullivan, who said, "Hey, have you considered running for office? It'd be really good." And I was like, "Well, I know what I would run on, and that would be fixing Route 28. And I know where, all of my now predecessors, electoral weaknesses are, and I know, like, I covered him for 9 years, I volumes of interviews I did with him. I was just like, I know how to do this, but I've never been on the inside of a campaign, and so I needed to get trained. And so what I did was I knew the LGBTQ Victory Institute ran a candidate campaign training program, so I applied for it. Couldn't believe I got accepted. Like, I walk in at this national training for 4 days, the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, Texas, and I'm seeing people who are from like upper echelons of society, just about. And I'm this weekly newspaper reporter from Manassas who's there. And I'm just like, how on earth did I get into this program? And then go figure, from that class, the two breakout stars would be Minneapolis City Councilwoman Andrea Jenkins, who became the first trans woman of color ever elected in America, and me as the first LNC trans state legislator elected in the United States. And like, just like how Andrea and I, we did not come from central casting at all to pursue office. In my case, you don't get a lot of transgender metalhead reporter Yogini stepmom vegetarians running for office here, especially when they are unemployed, uninsured, driving a $324 92 Dodge Shadow while living at her mom's house.
Like,
that's not typically your path to elected office at the General Assembly level. But I knew policy really well, and I also knew, all right, the one thing that Bob had always really done a good job of that in campaign world was he always got outspent, but he would out organize you because of, he had such a, strong base over at All Saints Catholic Church. I was baptized, confirmed at All Saints. I went to school at All Saints from 4th to 5th grade.
I saw that, yeah.
Like, I said to the kid, I was like, he's not going to out-Catholic me in the campaign. I was like, I was like, his strength is organization, which means that's where we have to be the strongest. We have to out-organize. And I called my group of volunteers the coalition of everyone else. Everyone else who felt like they didn't have a place, everyone else who felt like they had been singled out and stigmatized. I said, this is your campaign. Come knock doors for me. And we did. And then, I was outspent, outraised in my primary, but never outworked. And, we clearly controlled the earned media narrative of that, of that campaign. The news coverage was about Route 28, to the point where I was knocking doors in town of Haymarket, and I look and I see a copy of Inside Nova on someone's driveway, and it's got an animated hand from me pointed at Bob, blaming him for Route 28. And then he's got an animated hand pointing at Marty. And then there's one from Jen Rishel. It's about everything. When I realized that the front page story was my narrative, my issue, and that everyone had to respond to the table that I set, that's when I knew we were in control of the narrative of the campaign. It was that day knocking doors in the Haymarket, and and it worked. And I don't ever tell someone, hey, you can win a campaign entirely on news coverage alone. Don't worry about the rest. No, it supplements, it complements your direct mail strategy, your digital advertising, your TV advertising, everything else. It's a part of your strategy. It's not the full thing, but we had such saturation and inundation from local and national and statewide press and everything that my campaign became the dominant conversation. Some parts because of policy, if you were in Manassas, but if you're outside of, the district at the time, then it was, but don't you really want to see the guy who wrote the bathroom bill go against the trans woman? Don't you really want to see it?
I think outside of the district, 100%.
That was if you didn't live here, that was the thing, right? And so then at that time as a candidate, you have to know, okay, how do I maximize that coverage to not sensationalize the race, but still draw good attention to the race so that it'll help you with donations, with volunteer recruitment, with all the other stuff that comes from basically, your support system. Right. And so that's where political tacticians come in, and you have a lot of decisions to make, especially you as a candidate. And because I have a really good team, Ethan Damon's still with me. He's been with me the entire time. Oh, wow. My direct mail consultant has been with me the entire time. My TV guy, he's been with me since I won the primary in 17. He came on that general election, been on ever since. My researcher has been with me for 3 of my 4 campaigns. I've got a really good team. And that's good. We have the "they broke, don't fix it" approach. And then if it is broken, Route 28, then we fix the hell out of it.
Well, I thought it was bold, especially inside of the district where that's really an important part.
Oh, I was told, and you have to believe this, I was told by a Democratic strategist in Richmond, don't run on transportation. It's a top issue. People are too jaded about it. Look at these polls that we did in the past year. I go,
Yeah.
that's exactly why I should be running on it.
Right. Yeah, it's a thing. I mean, I thought it was really bold. And, like with a lot of things like that, you might say the things that the consultant said to you, but as soon as you start to run on that and it gets some oxygen, it just takes all the oxygen.
Yeah.
Because people, I mean, you can imagine, I talked to any number of people about that race, and they said, look, I don't usually vote Democrat, but I am sick and tired of this road. And the previous guy hasn't really done anything. He's much more socially conservative kind of guy. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but you have a very practical problem.
I would say there's something wrong with that, but that's just me.
Well, it's fine for him to have those looks,
I got it.
But when you have this huge problem that everybody agrees is a disaster, you've been in office a long time. It's a weakness.
Other people had tried the strategy before, and to the point where he said out loud that people had to. But number one, we did phenomenal with fundraising. I was the top, for all the candidates running for House of Delegates. I had outraised the Speaker of the House, at that summer. That June, we took a 20-1 fundraising advantage. That July, August. So I was like the second best in the state in June of 2017. July, August, we were number one, and just like, but by the time the Republicans, their biggest mistake that they made against me is they believed their own headlines in that 2017 campaign. And I can prove it too, because then at the time, John Whitbeck, who was, he had been known in Loudoun and such, and I think he was RPV chair at the time. He had gone on Kojo, on, WAMU, on Politics Hour, and said, he literally just scoffed at the idea that I was going to be competitive, that, oh, Bob, always gets outraised. He'll find a way, he's going to do this, whatever. And it's a good thing, the candidate's talking about 28 because you're not going to beat him with whatever else. And at that moment, I heard the sincerity in his voice where I knew he genuinely believed it. And I said to my team, oh, we're going to catch them flat-footed. They're not going to see us coming. And then when they realized mid-September, when the campaign finance reports from July, August came out, and they hit the panic button, it was too late.
Yeah.
It was way too late. We did like our 10th mail piece before their first one dropped. We were up on television weeks before their first ad came out, just every single thing. And so like over the summer, our baseline poll came out. I was down 2, but among most motivated voters, I was down double digits. And then when our tracker poll came out in the fall, we were dead even, and we had flipped most motivated on its head. We were up by double digits in most motivated. And so I grabbed my whole team. I told everyone to come to the room, and I said, all right, whoever knocks the most doors for the next 2 weeks wins. And that's what we did.
Yeah. So what, it's a pretty important year in Virginia.
Yep.
We're one of those people that have an election every 15 minutes. And this year, all of the General Assembly?
No, just the House of Delegates.
House of Delegates.
Yeah, House of Delegates and the 3 statewide.
The 3 statewide. Mm-hmm. When's the next time you're up?
27.
27?
Bless. I had to run 4 tough campaigns in 6 years. I needed a break.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's just back to back to back, right?
It will be in the House of Delegates as soon as you're done with one.
Yeah.
Like former Speaker of the House, Kirk Cox, he used to say, your next campaign begins as you were greeting voters at the polls on Election Day.
Yeah, it's true. And especially doubly so if you have a primary challenge.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So it just never stops. And next year is the long session.
Yeah. So, yep. So
what do you
even
think
years
will be
long
the
session, and then short, and the switch is 60 days.
Right.
For average listener who might not know. And then for odd years is the short session, which is basically 45, 46 days.
Right. What do you think what are going to be the big issues you guys have to cover?
Well, first, if there continues to be a Democratic majority in the House of Delegates, the 3 constitutional amendments that we passed the first version of this year, right. Those will absolutely be at the top of the agenda come January of next year. First one is for reproductive rights. Second one is for marriage equality, to repeal and replace the 2006 Marshall-Newman Amendment. and replace it with an affirmative right to marry. And third is for automatic restoration of voting rights. So basically, if you've done your time, if you've done your time, you don't have to go through the petition process with the governor, because as we've seen, different governors treat it very differently. Bob McDonnell was, he signed a lot of, these back in. Mark Warner, Tim Kaine, Ralph Northam, all were, to varying different degrees, like, hey, really want to do this. This Governor Youngkin has not been. And so, which has really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way about it.
Yeah.
To the point where it was like, there was a Virginia Mercury story where someone who said, hey, look, I would be voting Republican, but I'm not even able to get my rights. And so like, I'm not so sure I want to even do that when I do, right?
Yeah.
It's just, those will certainly be at the top of the table. But I think after that, if you have a Governor Spanberger, I certainly think that her big thing is going to be affordability, economic growth. Like she's going to really, really, really focus
like housing affordability.
She's definitely into that. And where I am in regard to housing is that, hey, look, housing is crucial, needed. I bought my first ever, home last year, a condo in Manassas Park at age 39 years and 11 months. So that either says a lot about my personal spending decisions or it says something about affordability in the area, right?
Right.
So, and I'll do a column A, column B, and I'll also say you spend 10 and a half years as a news reporter and then you make the very wise financial decision to run for the House of Delegates with its $17,640 salary. It's like, oh, that was a good call, wasn't it? Right. So there it is. So now my main income now comes from Emerge Virginia. I'm the executive director. So I train and recruit Democratic women how to run for office and work for Emerge America. Yeah, and so we have a lot of Emerge alums, who have had the pleasure of, going through the program here locally. The mayor of Manassas, Michelle Davis Younger, she's an Emerge alum. Diana Brown from the school board, she's an Emerge alum. Sonia Vasquez Luna from City Council is an Emerge alum. On the Manassas Park City Council, Yessi Amaya is an Emerge alum. So we've been, I've made a point of making Greater Manassas, really represented.
Right.
But yeah, and I am myself from 2017, and Abigail Spanberger also is from 2017.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I was in the boot camp. She was in the signature program. But with her, she's really, really big on housing, really, really big on affordability, on economic development and such. Where I come in is I say, hey, with the development part, okay, you want to redevelop existing properties where the environmental damage has already been done, and you're not going to try to just like gentrify the neighborhood. All right, cool. Let's talk. There's plenty of opportunities along Sudley Road for this, for example. I think a prime example that you've talked about here is what's going on both with, really not so much the Marstella one, but that's going to be community center, but really the Mathis Avenue, redevelopment.
Yeah.
That's prime example where it's like, okay, it's a big building and it's a big parking lot. You want to do new stuff there, you're not going to have a lot of complaints from me. That's local government decision. Unless you put a data center there, then you'll have big complaints from me. But that's a whole other conversation. But all right, you want to deal with housing there? Fine, not a problem. If you want to tear down the woods to do it, that's where I come in. I go, we cannot keep deforesting Manassas Park, and Western Prince William County and think that that's going to be good long-term strategy. It's not. It's like, oh, but look at the cost, look at X, Y, or Z. The woods provide so many benefits of cleaning your air. And by the way, the wildlife that actually lives there, they have an ecological role that they play as well that also helps us out. And, I always say with this, Rocky Raccoon doesn't get to go up at citizens time and go, hello, excuse me, Madam Chair, members of the board, I'm here today to ask you not to bulldoze my house. They don't get to do that. No. They don't even know that they're relying on us to do the right thing. And I don't understand why it's the natural proclivity of so many politicians to think, and developers, frankly, to think that wildlife doesn't matter and that we can just kill them, kill their natural habitat, and that's just fine. I don't buy that at all. I don't think that's okay. And you've lived here, for how many years now?
Since I was born.
Yeah. And so I've lived
59 years.
Yeah, I've lived here for 40 years. It'll be 41 this September. Remember when we were growing up and you could see huge amounts of blackbirds that would be flying overhead, and you could actually see the stars at night too? That's gone. I'm like, well, what happened? Well, you cut down all the trees, guess what happens with the birds? They leave. You have people having noise complaints all the way from Manassas, from Jiffy Lube Live. Guess what was buffering all that sound before it got over here? It was the woods. And then you replaced it with frickin' data centers, which are impervious surfaces to begin with. So now you've taken out the best stormwater management system that you have with the woods, and you've replaced it with something that takes sediment and runs it right through. It's just, it is foolish land use policy of the nth degree. And actually, I look at something that a lot of natives talk about, which is, seventh generation, 7 generations from now, how will the land be benefiting whoever's there? I look at this and I just see a giant concrete box where, oh, but look at the facade. It almost looks like it has windows. It's just like, this is such short-term thinking. And by the way, it does not have to pay off you think it does. Look what just happened in the city of Manassas. They approved data center with a bank inside. Turns out there's a little provision of code from before data centers existed that says, oh, wait, no, you don't have to pay the same taxes that all the other data centers are going to. You're screwed. What happens in Prince William County? Oh, we're going to sue the county over our property tax assessments. Oh, but I thought that the tax revenue was such the big claim that you were trying to make to the localities in the first place. Now you screw the city of Manassas, screwing the Prince William County. Turns out the city of Manassas Park that doesn't have them is the only one that's not getting screwed right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's data centers. I do IT work for a living. I don't love data centers. I don't have much occasion to go down to like the end of Route 7 and anymore. I used to live out there for a year, but I went there for the first time a year and a half ago. It's unbelievable. It's a moonscape. It really is. And here, about, in the city, I guess the positive thing I could say about it is at least they're in,
an
areas,
industrially zoned area.
Yeah, but yeah, we got screwed out of how many millions of dollars of.
Yours truly has to go and fix it next year.
Yeah, right.
Well,
right.
I'll be giving that a shot. I can promise you that. And by the way, so let's take a little mental adventure down the road map. Okay, imagine you leave here at Corporate Circle.
Right.
You go over the bridge. Right, so you come out here, you go on Cockrell, you make the right on 28. When you get to the top of the bridge, you look to the left, it's data centers. Then you're going to go past Micron, you're going to make a right on the Prince William Parkway. On your way to 66, data center, data center, data center, data center. Then you're going to go west on 66, going towards Gainesville. Soon as you are on 66, immediately the first thing you see, data center, and then another data center. And then, all right, let's go off Route 55 to go toward that part of Gainesville off Linton Hall, where Linton Hall, turns to just John Marshall Highway. And let's take that toward the town of Haymarket. There's another freaking giant batch of data centers. And then you go past the town of Haymarket, past Route 15, and you look to the left past Charles Street, another, and you can insert your favorite word here, data center. Yeah. That's, my God. Like, you just look at all of this and you go, okay, if one data center facility alone can take the entire electrical output of, say, Lake Anna, I'm not going to say Prince William Digital Gateway's name in the sentence, I'm just going to say that Prince William Digital Gateway's name in the sentence, then all of these combined, all these data centers, one after the next, they can take more energy than the entire city of Manassas, Park, and Western Prince William County combined. And then you go past that and you go, okay, how are we going to deal with all the electrical issues that are going to come with this? Oh, well, your rates are going to go up. And we have the report from JLARC that says, yeah, they will. Yeah. And then the next thing goes, okay, how about the sustainability, all the targets that we set when we passed the Virginia Clean Economy Act in 2020? Oh, this is going to put such a strain on the entire grid that we're going to now come back and say, oh, you need to loosen those up because they're going to be unrealistic and unattainable for you to meet. I'm going, oh, no, my dears. No. You see, that's the only guardrail we have in the entire code of Virginia to actually go up against the data center industry right now. So no, I'm not going to be gutting the Virginia Clean Economy Act over this. In fact, I would like to strengthen it. And so if, like this is the sort of thing where if you don't take money from the data center industry, and I don't take money from for-profit corporations, corporate banks, corporate lobbies, corporate trade associations, you have a lot of clarity of vision about this.
Right.
And the one thing my predecessor and I have in common is that there is never any ambiguity about where we stand on an issue. We will tell you very bluntly how we feel.
Well, I think, that the bulk of people feel like they don't love data centers. They're ugly. But where they feel really unheard is, and it's confusing, right? The price of electricity. I think a lot of people feel unheard, and there is a long-running joke about how Dominion Energy basically owns the General Assembly, but people I think feel unheard about it, and electricity is not going to get just a little more expensive. It's going to get a lot more expensive. Because the data centers are not going to stop.
And Virginia is, I think, the lead importer of electricity now from out of state by means of comparison.
Yeah.
And the way I look at this is you'll have people say, oh, well, that means we need to bring more fossil fuel plants back online. That means we need to do this and this. I go, stop it. It's the demand side. And by the way, the demand side, I'm not talking about you looking at too many cat videos on your social media. That's not what's driving this. What's driving this is force-fed AI upon you that you did not ask for, that for most people you do not need, and they are trying to convince you, yes, you do have to have this. Yes, you do need this. No, I don't. No. No, my Google searches were just fine before you did this.
Right.
And now you screwed up the front page. So that's number one. And number two, by the way, journalist turned legislator, the internet is not a primary source. And for all the students listening, AI is not a primary source for your homework. It's not. And if you just use ChatGPT and you type in your thing and it comes out and it turns out that it was wrong, don't be surprised. You need to fact check. You need to fact check the hell out of anything that comes with AI, let alone the internet in general, mainly by talking to human beings and actually pulling up research yourself based on what's available out there from public documents and other things. So anyway, that's AI is driving it. And then crypto mining is a disproportionate user of electricity at these data centers. How many people, if we were to go through the entire population of greater Manassas, Manassas Park and Prince William County, more than 500,000 people who live here, how many people are doing crypto mining on the day-to-day and are responsible for that? Again, it's not you and your cat videos that's driving the main problem here. Right. It is people bluntly, it is corporate greed that is driving this. And that means that you have to have legislators and you have to have local politicians as well. And you have to have members of Congress and you have to have president and all the rest who actually are willing to stand up to that. We are in very short supply of that.
Do you think we have any chance where the GA will approve some sort of, I mean, I understand they've got to make the best of bad choices, and maybe some of that's probably governed by federal law or who knows what, existing Virginia law. Do you think we have much of a chance to make a dent in the utility part of this?
So I will say the General Assembly itself did pass, and the governor vetoed, one piece of data center reform legislation that was going to be significant this year. It was from Delegate Josh Thomas and Senator Adam Evan, that dealt with more transparency around the process, giving localities more tools in terms of what they can use to evaluate a project. There was one thing in the original version of Delegate Thomas's bill that I really liked that I wish made it into the end, like so that they could consider impact on the grid and stuff. But the governor said during the State of the Commonwealth address that he wants Virginia to remain the state in the union for data centers and blah blah blah. Well, I mean so I will never vote to change Virginia's one governor law or one term governor law. Yes, I'm a member of the General Assembly, so I love the fact that they do 4 years and they have to get out of town. Yeah. Or it's you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. That is just fine with me. And that's regardless of party. I like the idea that you have fresh faces coming in and bringing up new ideas and new direction. I can't stand when I see states, Texas has done this, New York has done this, where you have governors who are running for fourth terms and such, you can have someone who is born, and then by the time they are getting their first car, they have the same governor they started with. Like, that's too long. Term limits for executives, yes. I see things a little bit differently for legislators. Not for me. Trust me, I'm not going to be in that position. I'm not going to be. I won't do the full. I won't do the full Colgan. I'm not going to do the full 40. But I look at that a little differently because you're a part of a body, right? You're not just the one entity at that point. And so you're one of 40, you're one of 100, when you're in Virginia. And so I do see that a little bit differently, and that the committee structure is based on seniority. And so, there's pros and cons that come with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, especially, you can't, as a new person to either body, walk in there and expect a chair. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And that's really hard. Even on, local councils and school boards, that's a hard job. Did you see the Manassas school board just approved a rule that there's term limits for the chair, which had never occurred to me. And I was interviewing one of the school board members, and she brought that up, and it was evidently somewhat controversial. But it's a rule; they can change their own rules. It doesn't require a vote.
I didn't have a dog in that fight on that one, because I'm just like, look, what the little institutional things that you all want to do for your own governing body. You'll notice one thing that I do that is very different from my predecessor is I do not go in front of local governing bodies without the invitation of the local governing body to speak in front of them. This is a radical change in policy here. And the reason, even though I'm in my 8th year, in office doing this, is I do not want the heavy hand of the state government being imposed on localities during their decision-making process for a lot of stuff. However, that does not preclude me from writing op-eds, social media posts, phone calls, whatever else it is that I do to make my point. But in terms of, I don't see them on the daily when I'm in Richmond showing up to where I work to tell me what to do in general. Sometimes, some local elections, will certainly come in, especially when you're dealing with a local issue that has come to the General Assembly. Right. Absolutely. We had a bill up this past year that was, dealing with Western Prince William, specifically my district. I did not bring the bill. And, it was very big controversial. Okay, fine. But if you're not coming into where I work on the daily for that, I'll respect your workspace, even if I have, vented one way or the other or opined one way or the other about, my position on something. Right. And it's like, all right, at that point, the voters voted me to do my job. The voters voted you to do your job. Time to go do it. And, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. When I was on the council, I know that we kind of didn't love it when state level electeds would come.
Don't you love your small government Democrat here?
We didn't love it. Yeah. Now, if Colgan or somebody called me up and said, hey, I want you to understand how I feel about this. All right. I'm completely fine with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, I think we only had it happen once or twice, maybe. And I can tell you that both of those causes failed in front of the council, whatever the hell they were.
And what's interesting is when you look here in Manassas, you had, when Jackson Miller was in office, he came directly from city council. Yeah. I came from covering council meetings and board meetings for more than 9 years locally here. Right. And I do think that if you have either direct local governing experience because you were elected to the body, or if you were deeply involved with the process as a reporter would be, that it does give you a different appreciation and different respect for the roles of state government versus local government and such. That said, when you are dealing with a dual enroll state, you will have local governing officials who all the time will say, don't tell us what to do for blah, blah. And like, well, actually, literally every power that you have is the government telling you, state government telling you what you can and can't do, because it's a dual enroll state. That's
most of which you can.
That's right. It's how things work. And so when it comes to like, well, I don't want you to impose requirements on us. I'm like, well, if it's unfunded mandates, let's have that. That's a separate conversation. But if it's in terms of like, okay, Let's talk. Let's just bring this into data center world. Okay, well, if you are building data centers next to people's homes, and I think that's a bad idea, and there's a lot of residents who think that is also a bad idea, then I'm going to be the person who goes to Richmond and I'm going to fix it. And then I'm going to fix it by telling you can't do that.
Right.
And
Right.
if you jump up, and do all the jumping jacks in the world to try to get my attention, tell me don't do that, I'm going to be like, no. If you make a bad choice like that, then state government has to come in and, clean up your mess. Yeah, that's definitely a thing. Like, I feel very strongly with that. And at the same time, I think it's also you do it with discretion. It's not that you don't need to drive headfirst into every single one of those battles.
Right. Right.
Pick them for that when they are significant.
Yeah, because that's hard.
Yeah.
Especially when the state or the feds change land use. That's hard for localities because you basically give the local governing body leeway.
Mm-hmm.
And so you hold these public hearings, but they don't matter. I know, because there's only one way the council can vote.
But so even if it's not land use, let's talk about fallout from feds, right? With the bill that was passed, and they said, hey, over 320,000 Virginians could lose, Medicaid expansion or, coverage and stuff. Keep in mind that in order to be qualified for Medicaid expansion in the first place, that means you were working because you were earning between 100 and 138% of the federal poverty, or 138% of the federal poverty line, right? And so you already have working people. Now you're asking them to go through a bureaucratic hoop by doing more paperwork.
Yeah.
And I thought, if I knew anything about the Republican Party, they hated having red tape and bureaucratic processes that were unnecessary. So
only ones they like.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? So anyways, with all that, I go, okay, what happens locally then? What happens to the MAP clinic in Manassas Park? What happens to our local clinic here in Manassas? Even though it's technically county land by the courthouse, what happens over at our local health district there? What happens with all the other free clinic and low income, sort of services that we have here? And then what happens with private practice physicians who do take Medicaid, but then are they not going to take Medicaid patients? There's going to be significant fallout that happens at the hyper local level. And then when you have a factor in the SNAP cuts that are going to come from that, who do you think gets affected by that? Georgetown South is going to get affected by that.
Yeah.
Ashton Avenue, a lot of this area here in the city is going to very much be affected by that. The western part of Manassas Park very much will be affected by that.
Yeah.
What happens with them? Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot more people going to the Haymarket Regional Food Pantry. You're going to have a lot more people seeking need from CFH, where, Helen Sarita, who's very well known, here in the city. She does a lot of, good charitable work with that. She's going to have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do to help a lot more, local folks?
Well, and they're probably not bringing in nearly as much money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because all that stuff is cut.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just had just did a thing over in Harris Pavilion yesterday, for, to make sure that we were raising money for local food pantries through the PWC Hunger Free event. So there's going to be significant fallout at the local level that your city council is going to have to deal with, that your mayor's going to have to deal with, that your state delegate, your state senator is going to have to deal with. Yeah. And then, by the way, your treasurer and your commissioner of revenue are going to have to deal with when there's going to be different taxation fallouts from this, right? And are people paying their bills on time? Are people, is money coming in at the same rate that you were expecting it? Are people still going out to eat? Or, at the same level of consistency? Lots of dominoes fall from this, where the feds just go, okay, job's done. Look, we passed a giant bill. And your local government goes, yeah. And your state government goes, we have to cover what?
Yeah.
And at which point, okay, then we either need new revenue or we're going to have to cut core services. And, I am not on the Senate Finance and Appropriations Committee. I have a lot of seniority to go before I get there. But I trust that Senator Lucas is going to be, along with, and on the House side, Delegate Lutorian from Prince William, who chairs the House Appropriations Committee, they're going to have a lot of really intense meetings between November this year January of next year, as you have governor elect, in waiting,
Right.
to figure out like, okay, what are we going to do? And also then there's another question of, are we going to go into special session in September? We were planning to a couple months ago, but we'll see what happens.
For?
Federal fallout from that was just from the Doge cuts.
Right.
I mean, so
right. Oh, the unemployment stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think very much of the way that the Doge cuts occurred, but I will tell you that there is a tremendous amount of federal talent looking for work, and we've hired a couple of them. It's fantastic.
I'm telling you, I did a thing through my work at Emerge where I did a national call where I said, hey, look, the government's loss can be, state, local, and
Right.
congressional government's gain if you all run for office. Because feds have, in order to just pass, especially when you need clearances, especially when you get into like that level of, federal procurement and, and all the other sorts and security stuff, everything that comes into like this sort of stuff. Like a lot of feds could make really good candidates, but they also feel like, hey, they've been under the Hatch Act for years. They don't feel the need that they can actually necessarily express their opinions. I'm like, all those things do you really want to say out loud for all these years?
Now you can do it.
Now you can do it really, really loud.
Yeah.
So like, hey, if you're a fired Fed or former federal contractor or subcontractor, if you're a Democratic woman, come talk to me. I'll train you how to run for office.
I read I think it was in probably either the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, kind of a breakdown about how they are not cutting, federal funds, Medicaid. And yeah, I feel like if you want to cut the program, cut it. But the way they did it, you have to re-register every 6 months, and there are all these other hoops that you have to join through. The first thing that went through my brain was, who's going to do all of this re-registration work? The states aren't set up. Even wealthy states are not set up to handle, all of this, all of these other requirements. And I think instead of just saying, look, we're just going to reduce the amount of dollars, they kind of went around it, through the back door and said, well, you're going to have to re-register every 6 months, even though you're working for a living. You have to re-register every 6 months, and whatever the rest of the hoops were. And, I thought it was kind of a crappy way to do it.
Well, the big government folks wanted more regulations, and they wanted more red tape. Isn't that fun?
I didn't love it. I didn't love it at all. My Republican friends are not going to be happy to hear that, but they're frequently not happy with me.
Well, let me put it this way. Of all 60 of my bills that we've passed into law, every one of them earned bipartisan support. Some overwhelmingly, like unanimous, and some one in one chamber and one in the other chamber, right?
Right.
So it is what it is. And then one bill, a very hyper-local bill from Manassas Park to restrict test drives on Manassas Drive, did just fine in the House and then caught a fever in the Senate and passed 2119. That was weird. So beyond that, I've always had bipartisan support from no chambers.
The stuff that happens in electoral politics.
Where do I even begin? But anyways, beyond that, I work really, really well with a lot of Republicans, both in the Virginia General Assembly as well as, at home in the district.
Right.
Because I'm like, how'd you learn how to do that? I'm like, because I've been debating my mom since I was born. I was born 2 weeks late. Do you think she didn't cuss me until I got out? Right. It's like, no. Are you kidding? So I grew up in a mixed party household, mixed ideology household, really.
Same.
My grandfather, who lived with us for a long time, he had been a union guy in New York who, after World War II, he worked for American Postal Workers Union, and everything. And so like my grandfather and I were voting Democratic at the time. My mom, my sister were voting Republican, right? And it's just like, okay, well, we learned how to function, and, coexist.
Right.
Fine. But I think, especially when you're dealing with a lot of local issues, land use issues, even different parts of taxation issues, and then administration of government service issues when you're getting into how things work. There are not necessarily R&D ways to do things. The issue that I struggle with the most with this is when who was in the facts business for 10 and a half years of
Right.
vetting facts, look at a piece of information here and say like, okay, well, this is what the facts tell us. So what are we going to do with it? And then someone else saying, but I have a different set of facts. I'm like, no, you don't. No, 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 no. When I look in the sky and I say the sky is blue, and then you look at the sky and you say it is a molten lava stream that is coming from the highest of volcanoes from, the ether world. I go, no, no, no. Those are not equal.
Right.
No.
Right. Right.
Now, so when I am looking at like, okay, here's something that is peer-reviewed research that's coming from, credible organizations, whatever, and then I hear someone else go, nuh-uh.
Yeah.
Then that is really, really frustrating, and I don't always know what to do in that situation about like, how do I remedy this immediately? Because
it's hard.
I can just, what am I going to do? Yell louder, and that's going to make my facts better. Like, just, you have to figure out, all right, where am I going to meet you in the middle on this?
Right.
Or where am I going to just convince you to come along to my side? Or maybe my argument's weak. Am I going to admit that I'm wrong?
Yeah. Yeah, that happens occasionally.
And here's the wildest thing in politics. Politicians who change their mind. Cost John Kerry's 2004 election, changed his mind, right? That today is so trivial.
Well, it cost George Bush, right?
First Bush. Yeah. I will not read my lips, will not raise taxes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Mark Warner did, though, and he went on to the United States Senate.
Yeah.
Yep.
But in Washington now.
Yeah. And Mark Warner also, he left the governor's office with like Thomas Jefferson level approval ratings.
Yeah.
So just things happen. But you'll remember here in Manassas, it was almost like the epicenter. I think it's 2002 was the fight about the regional sales tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And it went down. And Warner had to learn a lot from that. And, he actually closed out his term relatively popular. But, I think he found out pretty hard early that it's like, you can't just tell people this is the way things are going to be because it's good for you.
Yeah.
You have to do things from bottom up, which is why when I was doing my 28 policy, you know what I did that was so radical and weird is we went to Manassas Park Community Center. We went to Cougar Elementary School, both Manassas Park, and we said to the community, what would you like a redesigned Route 28 to look like? Here's a whole buffet of options. This is everything we got. You tell us.
Right.
1,334 survey responses. Which
that's pretty good.
In government is pretty good.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
And compiled all of it together. And they're like, all right, they're down for R cuts. They're down for a raised median. They wanted a shared use path at 8 feet wide. The best we could do is a sidewalk at 5 feet wide because the eminent domain cost for this extra 3 would have been astronomical at that point. And so it's like, okay, well, we're going to get you as close as we can, within reason. And so we did that. And that's why my STARS project hasn't had the fire and brimstone, pitchforks out at midnight approach of opposition that you've seen a lot of other projects have around here. Because if you go to the community first, and maybe I learned that from being a reporter, who knows?
Yeah.
It's almost like I watched Dominion try to cram things down people's throat and then say, but don't you love it? Like, no.
Not really.
No. Why don't you talk to people first and then do everything else?
Yeah.
Well, we might not be able to get the most profitable thing.
I think most, well, I don't know, a decent percentage of people, I feel like the utilities get what they want. They're empowered by both the feds and the state. I mean,
well, some of us every now and then get a couple ones against them. Every now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, my bill to ban above ground transmission lines along the 66 corridor between Gainesville and Haymarket, we passed that in 2020. It's in effect for the rest of this decade. That was a win for us. That was good. We're going to have to get that reauthorized. But I'll tell you what, though, that's been when my 23 campaign, one of the I'll just say one of the most interesting attacks on me was you did nothing to block any data center from coming up. You did. And I was like, you're trying to get me to disprove a negative. That's interesting. But I was also like, but we passed my bill to ban above ground transmission lines. Do you have any idea the hassle that has caused Dominion and data center developers and the rest of them to try to figure out how are we going to get the routing around to do this sort of stuff? We have caused a major impediment. And that's because it's what the people wanted. After they did the hybrid route in 2018, my first year in office. So for you aspiring politicos out there listening to this, You want a good idea in your freshman year? Do this. Stand up on the floor of your new chamber and take on the caucus chair of the other party, as well as a committee chair of another party, and really go at them about one section in a huge bill regarding the particulars of burying or partial burying of a hybrid transmission line, because you found in the hours that you spent reading that bill over the weekend, because you're actually a good legislator even when people aren't watching you.
Right.
You found the part, and by the way, the first phone call I made about that was to Bob Weir. By the way, true fact about this. Him and I, when we talked about this, they said that participation in the pilot program, this is a paraphrase, shall not preclude the placing of above ground transmission line infrastructure along this corridor. And I was like, God, that defeats the whole purpose.
Wow.
So I came in on the House floor, just like, no. And by the way, you know what else I did? I went out with one of my constituents, his name is Brian Riley, and we measured out with tape measure when I was going through thorn bushes and everything from the sound wall on 66 to the back of this guy's yard, his property. And we found out the right of way that they wanted for this was a soccer ball tap away from his kid's swing set that they were going to do with this stuff, right? And so I'm like, I have significant problems with this. And this is like, even this thing that we have here is not as good as you think it is. So one of the senators, Dick Black, says, like, when the bill gets over from the House, I voted against it, still got out of the House. He goes, well, we're going to pull out the Prince William stuff since the Prince William delegation is voting against this stuff in the first place. But instead, what they ended up doing is they stripped out that whole line instead. But you see, Andy, I went to Catholic school. And in 13 years in Catholic school, I learned a little thing about sin by omission. Just because you didn't include it doesn't mean you banned it.
Right.
And so I threw another fit.
Right.
And 2019 came around. I put in a bill. I was still in the minority, so they killed that. 2020 came around, though. And now Dominion's coming to my office like, now we have to actually negotiate with you, huh? And I go, yeah, you do. Have a seat. And so we agreed to, at first they wanted a 5-year expiration, which would have been this year, would have been July 1 this month. I said, oh no, absolutely not. No, we're doing the rest of the decade minimum.
Yeah. Got
them to agree to that. They get to the Senate, and this is why. Well, Jack, you had Democratic trifecta. Why did you need that? Because I was not going to get Dick Sassler's support as Senate Majority Leader, which was crucial for this.
Sure.
Unless I could get them on board. And so we come into the House, and I remember one of the Republican members, Kathy Byron, she asked me, well, what do you think about this? Like, oh, we're fine with this. And she's like, what? And then we go to the Senate, same question just about from Senator Sassler. I go, what do you think about this? And they're like, oh yeah, we support the bill. And they're like, he's like, and he looks at me like, how'd you do that?
What'd you do?
And the real reason on that was Dominion was done like fighting in the area. They were just like, look, we're not. Then the Board of County Supervisors started approving data center after data center after data center after data center. And Dominion actually told them, which was a very different world compared to, we'll just say, sins of the past, where they said, if you build this stuff, we're going to have big infrastructure problems and you're going to require us to build a lot more transmission lines. Just telling you that in advance. Yes, we're still going to make a ton of money off of it, but just so you know, you're going to have a lot more infrastructure.
Right.
And away we went. And, well,
here we are.
Here we are. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's about covers it. It's been 90 minutes.
Has it really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to pass along any like events or anything, stuff that's going on that you want the community to know about?
First thing, let's talk about early voting. That's one last thing I definitely want to mention. So early voting is going to begin September 19th, which is a Friday. And here, basically, in our 3 localities here, here's where you vote. So unlike previous years, other than last year, and so I'll get in a second, Prince William is only going to have the Office of Elections, the one across from the courthouse on Lee Avenue. That will be open beginning September 19th for you to cast an early in-person ballot. The Haymarket Library, which a lot of my constituents like using, that's not going to come online until October. So you're going to have to wait for that. I've had my share of words about that, but that's a local governing decision. It's not a state one. I have feelings, but anyway. So That's going to start then City of Manassas. You go over to Town Hall, not City Hall, Town Hall, the parish building,
Yeah.
directly next door, just like you've been doing normally. City of Manassas Park, you go into City Hall, our brand new, wonderful City Hall, which is actually quite nice. And you vote on the first floor over there. And so that begins September 19th. We are 99 days away from Election Day right now, as of the recording of this podcast on today being a Monday, 29th. So that's the first thing I definitely want to plug. First Friday's coming up here in the city. And also, by the way, people forget Manassas Park has last Friday.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, Manassas Park is last Friday over at Plaza. So come on down. You're going to have a good time there. Also want to plug, we have the Farmers Market in Manassas and Farmers Market in Manassas Park. Town of Haymarket on Sundays also has its Farmers Market. Go show some love out in Haymarket. It's right in front of Town Hall, right along 55. And the last thing I would ask people to do is, if you are really concerned about just anything happening, local level, state level, federal level, internationally, where you're just like, I see suffering, I see people hurting, I see pain, ask yourself what you can do to take care of the person in front of you. You can't change everything in the world every single day. And I know it's really, really hard, especially when we see horrific pictures of people starving and all the rest.
Yeah.
What you can do, donate to the Haymarket Regional Food Pantry. Go donate to ACTS. Go donate to Northern Virginia Food Rescue. There's people in our community right now whose lives you can make a little bit better, who you do have some sense of control over the outcome.
Okay.
You might not be able to get through X, Y, or Z when it comes to national, international stuff.
Right.
But there's always something that you can do to help. And by the way, I don't care what letters next to your name, DRIBBQ, doesn't matter to me. If you want to go and help people, there's a way for you to do it. This is a think global, act local. Absolutely, you can do that right here in our home community.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Andy.